Welcome, welcome, welcome. It has been such a long time since I've seen Virginia and Claire. We've been hiding behind LinkedIn audio for a long time. I thought, let's take the opportunity and show our faces. And I got to tell you guys, I want to thank you very much officially. We went out to dinner for my birthday, 65th birthday. We got together with family.
Milestone.
I know,
Yay.
Medicare baby and all that. But above all, I've just been feeling so overwhelmed with all the stuff going on in June and July and the summer. And I can't even know what it's like, Claire, when you have kids still and you have all that end of the year stuff.
It's amazing how many things can be happening in 1 month.
I used to call May having seasonal dementia disorder because I was always losing my mind. But I realized between the three of us, we have 3 generations covered, right? Because Claire, you're a millennial, I'm a Gen Xer, and you're a boomer, right, Kenneth?
Yeah, I guess I am. Yeah.
I love it.
I think it's so great. We got together, and I don't know if everyone realizes why we call this lions, tigers, and resumes. But I think
my generation might be wondering. Actually,
yeah, I know. Well,
sorry.
we were thinking of something to talk about. We're going to do resumes and LinkedIn. And it was like a whole thing. And anyone who's ever seen The Wizard of Oz, which I don't know if you have or not, Dorothy. I guess it was Dorothy who started. It's lions and tigers and
bears.
Bears.
And it was Dorothy, yes.
So this became the kind of thing about that. So we talk about anything and everything related to resumes and the like. And it's funny because I actually had a very interesting conversation right before this because I'm at Leac Harrison now, and I was actually in a branding session, and this question came up from the 2 people there who are of my generation, to be fair. And they were so used to seeing skills on the bottom of the resume, and they're so used to seeing not having a good branding statement on top. And so I was trying to explain that this is, and they said, well, this must be the way it's done now. I mean, compared to when they were looking. And I said, one of the things we look to do is make sure the resume is viewable right off the bat, like the first third or first half by someone, the best part of it. But I'd love to get, since I'm not really a resume writer per se, I'd love to get your take, Virginia and Claire, on what you think about even the way the resumes are put together.
So I always reflect back. I've said this in many calls before. To me, we read resumes the same way we read every other piece of information that comes our way. So think about how you read the news when you're in a rush, whether you go on Twitter or you look at a news site. What we do is we scan headlines. And then if the headline grabs you, you read the first couple of lines. That's all you look at. But those sections tell you what the story is going to be about and what you want to come back to when you have more time. Resumes are the same way. And so you lead off with a headline at the top that says, I'm a chef, I'm an astronaut, like whatever you're targeting. And then the paragraph that follows explains the reader briefly how it makes sense that you're a fit for the role. Ideally, it doesn't describe you with a ton of fluffy adjectives, but it replaces adjectives with a couple bits of information that are unique to your particular story.
I second.
I'll take a breath now.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what I was thinking too. So from my background, which, recruiting plus marketing plus now, medical sales and coaching, what really sells is great messaging. And the thing that I like to encourage everybody to remember is that when you have a resume being put together or a LinkedIn page, it is the first place that your ideal target, which is the hiring team that you're targeting, right? Whatever company you want to work with, is going to experience with you, right? So what we want them to see is exactly what Virginia is sharing. What is going to matter to them? Because if we're not scannable, just like if a LinkedIn post doesn't have a great hook, you're not going to click see more. So we want to key into those sales techniques and those messaging techniques that help people want to click see more on us. And one, I would say that when I started seeing people getting, brave enough to start putting that branding statement at the top, And I actually still see this a lot with students who are getting into the career for their first time, is that sometimes that branding statement can start with an ask. So instead of talking about the value that you're ready to provide your target, it can sound something a little bit more like, I'm seeking an opportunity in this arena, right? Or I'm seeking an opportunity to grow and become this type of professional. But I caution people from using that kind of strategy as well, because again, we have to remember we're selling ourselves to our customers. So we want to hit them with an immediate impact statement, a value statement for what we are prepared to deliver, not what we need. Because I can tell you, I can't remember the last time that I bought something from someone because they needed me to. I bought it because they had something that I wanted that either solved my problem or made me feel really great. So that's where I feel you can really set yourself apart by just focusing on that branding statement right at the top. And Kenneth, I mean, that's a lot like LinkedIn headlines, right?
It is, and I think one of the challenges that I find is most people don't realize what they can do to differentiate themselves on LinkedIn. It's like, you have that title and you can use underneath your headline. It's not your past job. It's about the branding and what you can do. And I think that, plus the fact that I still see so many LinkedIn profiles, because the first thing I'll do with Leac Harrison is I will look at their LinkedIn profile, because a lot of them don't even have skills for me to put on the resume. So I have to look at the profile to get an idea of what skills I would even think about adding. But even before that, I'm basically looking at a resume and I'm like, this is a branding thing. LinkedIn is not a resume, but they're told, well, this is the way I was told it was supposed to be. I said, by who? So I think a lot of times it's a lack of knowledge or understanding.
Well, and 15 years ago, you could cut and paste your resume into LinkedIn, and you were, ahead of the curve. So I get why people used to think that. But it has certainly evolved as more and more people have come on board. You need to be found, and the keywords and the branding. The keywords help you to get found. The branding helps you for people to stick around.
So I do want to do some shout outs to people on the call. If you have questions, definitely post them in the chat. We'll happy to answer. Terry from Somerset. Meryl Cass, pleasure to be joining. I'm Carol McCullough. Seeing a lot of my Jersey folk here. Erin Kennedy.
Rosalind, my fellow Gen Xer. Hello.
Yes, for sure. And I think Sarah Tim, Gen Xer, we got
to represent all generations on the show.
That's right.
It's a generational inclusive show today.
Exactly.
Virginia, next time, Virginia, we have to get our kids on here so we can go even more generations.
Oh, there you go. Mine are all Gen Z. I don't know what yours are, Claire.
So mine are too, but I mean, can you imagine a multiple generation call with 4 generations?
That'd be cool.
That'd be awesome.
Get your 3-year-old and your 5-year-old on there or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I actually had a call with someone once, and her 5-year-old came into the chat just like this and said, "Mom, can you open up the popcorn?" So
that's perfect.
Which brings me to a whole other discussion in and of itself. But one thing that I really wondered about, because I don't even know how to answer this question, if a LinkedIn profile is not really in good shape, but it's still being worked on, how would you feel about putting that on a resume? Because we usually say put your LinkedIn URL on your resume, but if it's not really in good shape yet, do you think it should go on, or do you think it should wait?
Ooh, great question.
I think about it sort of generationally. I feel like there's the bias that people that are older Gen Xers and baby boomers aren't very up to speed on technology. So having a LinkedIn URL sort of shows that you at least embrace current platforms. So I would, in those cases, I would rather put it on, even if it's a little lackluster, than not at all. What do you think, Claire?
I would say to hide it for the time being, if you're actively working on it, because I think that way, what happens is a lot of times when I'm helping someone either transition from a traditional representative role in medical sales, and for those of you who haven't met me yet, I work primarily with medical sales professionals. So when they're transitioning from, say, a rep role to wanting to become more of a leader, because we have that concentrated week or so that we are using to really refresh the brand and say and put the message out there that supports their new initiative, we do kind of hide it for a few days.
Yeah.
But if you're slowly updating and you're tweaking things here and there, and you're generally trying to attract the same sorts of roles, I would say keep it on there, because at least you're you're working toward it. You're actively thinking about it. And then maybe because it's on your resume, there's a little bit of internal pressure there too to finish it. So that could be a good thing too.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that comes up a lot in our sessions is how many years to go back on the resume, and before you go into just the specific job title. And I know it depends. We usually say maybe after 10 years, you should just really kind of do it with, or 10 to 15 years, just with the name and the position. But this was the question that came up. Someone said to me, I did this thing 15, 20 years ago that I'm really proud of, and I really don't want to hide it, but it really shows me in the best light. So how can I put that on there? And I said, well, why don't you put that either on your about section on LinkedIn or as part of what you're doing in your branding statement to show you in that light. But I don't know if that's the best advice or not, because it's old, but it's also relevant, at least to that person. So I'd be curious to get your feedback on that.
So I take a little bit of a different tack on that. If someone is targeting a C-suite role, nobody's going to expect them to be 34 years old. In my mind. So number one, I am more than okay going to 15 years. Sometimes if it is an experience that needs a lot of real estate to tell the story, I'll even go a little bit further back. That doesn't happen as often, but I always include an earlier experience section that allows me to pick and choose sort of the relevant accomplishments from that earlier stuff. And I just remove the dates from that experience. Right. I also will make darn sure to reference it at the top of the resume and in the about section. With LinkedIn though, I think the others will take a different tack, but I feel like if something really valuable happened, I am willing to risk the age issue in order to be able to put that experience on there. And I don't really care when it happened. I don't know if you feel differently about that.
I'm with you. I think that if it tells about your impact that you're prepared to make for the next role. That's why I love, and I'm sure everybody listening to caught it, that, the first thing we always say is, it depends.
Yes.
It depends.
It does. It impacts everything, whatever the lens is that you're working from. But relevancy is key. If you scoop ice cream at Baskin Robbins and you're targeting a CFO role, that role might not be relevant. Right. You don't need to worry about gaps when you're going that far back or anything. Just pick and choose the stuff that's relevant.
Right. Or if you're then targeting, this is why it depends, right? If you're targeting a role at Baskin Robbins, maybe part of your strategy is
good point.
Brand loyalty from the very beginning, right?
Yep.
So it truly does. I think in the end for me, it comes so much down to who are we selling here?
Right.
Who are we targeting? What's our target? What do you want? And that really is the hardest part. I have to admit, if I could say, the biggest questions or hangups that my clients and my friends often get when it's, how do I put the right information on my resume? It's, well, what do you want to do next? And if you can clearly define your target, that almost solves 50% of the questions, because then we can think, okay, if I reverse engineer my strategy toward what it is I want next, some of those questions can be answered that way.
The one thing that I find helpful to help people figure out what's worth putting on or not is to say, what skills did you learn from that earlier role that is really relevant to what you want to do today? Like if maybe you learned your leadership skills when you were in the Army back in the early 90s, that's what you put on there, but you don't need to go into details about the entire experience. It's that you cemented the leadership skills. So think about what skills are relevant to what you're doing now or what you want to do next.
So Roberta had this question. I'd be curious to get your sense, Virginia and Claire. Do you have a suggestion how many characters the headline on a resume should be?
Like numbers of character? I mean,
I'm thinking like the job title. Like if you have the job title on the top, maybe it's project manager or something else. Is there a certain type of number or that you might suggest, or?
I mean, LinkedIn gives you 220 characters, so I am a fan of capitalizing on them. With the resume, it's number one, the headline should be customized based on the opportunity. So if you want to add in the industry term to show that you're an industry expert, add it on there. Remove it to be industry neutral. I don't really have a character limit. I just need to make sure it takes up no more than one line.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I'm answering the question right or not, though.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the exact character count either, but I'd say it's as long as you can get that opening statement down to one line, it helps you in a lot of ways. Number one, it is easier to format one line just like a little, just special, right? Give it a color, give it a italicized, right? Now we're talking about the resume. But the other thing too that I really like to use this for is once you get that clear on what you can do for the companies that you're targeting and who that is, and you can get it down to one line on paper, it's going to be so much easier for you to then also remember that when you're at a party, in an elevator, walking your dog, and you run into somebody that, you know, just so happens to be involved or close to the job that you want. So it's nice to get that branding statement down for so many reasons, and the shorter, the better.
One of the other things I see with a lot of people is that branding statement or that first paragraph, I am driven crazy. Everyone is experienced. Everyone is a multitasker. Everyone's a clear communicator. Everyone is, and I'm like,
and those adjectives used to work great, and then everyone else started using them, and they got diluted, to say the least.
Everyone's disrupting markets. I'm like, no wonder the economy is what it is. We've all been disrupting things, all of us.
Right.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting how, you know, what works for a while then becomes overused. Like we used to joke for the last 3 years, authenticity. Oh gosh, like authenticity.
Word. Yeah.
Wonderful, beautiful. But now it's lost its gravity. Mm-hmm. So Virginia, how do you architect words? Like how do you create you know, new phrases that really mean something to avoid the more common things everybody's saying?
Yeah. So what I do is I go to the job postings and I ask to see a handful of them. And usually 9 times out of 10, there's sort of common phrasing that tells you that's what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And I weave that in and rephrase it in a way that allows me to include some details about the client's unique experience. That way the paragraph becomes, or the sentence becomes about them and their story, and it makes that paragraph a little more memorable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a tall order, though.
It really is. In fact, it's funny too, because the more that I learn about marketing, and I got a degree in advertising, guys. So like I've got like the old information, and now everything is reinventing itself. But now I go to the job postings like you're sharing, and then just get really specific on a couple of key things that this person might do that are going to be relevant to the next role, but that are different, you know, that are different to everybody else. And that even though sometimes it's in simpler language, right? Because we tend to get flowery on a resume.
Remove flowers for sure.
Flowers be gone. We would be terrible florists. We would be like sniffing them all off like the Addams Family. But clear is kind. We need to rename the show.
There we go.
Addams Family. Addams Family resume.
Morticia. All right.
Yeah. Morticia.
Uncle Fester.
Your resume. This is why we have to go on audio mostly.
Oh my God, but the job postings to me are that treasure trove, and I like to go down to usually the bottom section. I skip all the stuff at the beginning and go down to the must-haves. Mm-hmm. But you can sort of glean the common problems that they're bringing you on to solve.
Yeah.
So I have to ask the two of you about Chat GPT or AI, because what I've started to do a little bit with is when I don't understand, when someone sends me a resume there and it's kind of a job title or something, I actually go to Chat GPT to get an understanding about what the job is, because I don't necessarily know with all the different. Good idea. Like, and I'll say to myself, well, here's an idea. So then I'm going to word it in a little bit for a personal way. But if I don't know what the job is, how can I advise someone besides the word? So, I mean, for me, it's just kind of a reference, but I'd be curious to know how you feel about that, the two of you, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to be starting to do Chat GPT and the like for doing resumes too.
I mean, I'm old. I've done so many resumes at this point. I haven't yet come across a job that I don't know what it is, but when I am using ChatGPT or any AI, I actually I use Bard. What's the one on Microsoft Edge, and then I'm
Okay.
using ChatGPT. I literally use all three, and I'll plug in the same question to compare and contrast what they say. And then but then I delete the search, because I don't want anyone's stuff and their private information on those platforms. So do not cut and paste your resume on those, because it'll take it and put it into their whatever universe.
Yep. Smart. I think there were a couple of people who got let go recently from a company because they did they were putting in company data into ChatGPT to work on some project. And so that can really catch you up. ChatGPT, I have tried so many prompts to make it pump out some good resume statements for me. I'm still underwhelmed.
A little, yeah.
But I will say, yeah, agreed. But I will say there are cases that I've done something similar to you too, Virginia, where it's been a pivot to like oil and gas to, biotech. And I thought, well, let me just see what some recommended transferable skills would be, or maybe some career stories could be. And there are some gems, but they always need reworking. So I would caution anyone from using ChatGPT directly to their resume for all the reasons Virginia had mentioned, but also because if you think about it, that information, language model generated or not, is still being uploaded individually by employed programmers, right? I mean, like, people are filling the database. So eventually, just like there's a lot of redundant resume language, just like the buddy that you used his resume and you copied it for yours and tweaked some things, it's going to be the same pool of information on a ChatGPT. So it pays really to sit back and think through your story, because just in the doing, and I'm sure Kenneth and Virginia, I'm curious to see if you've heard this as well, but my clients often will say, wow, just in going through the process of thinking about my experience critically and putting together the stories for why I'm valuable now and for whom has been an absolutely phenomenal confidence builder. And it's helped them tell their story, because you guys, we can't stop at the resume and the LinkedIn. Like, I wish it was just a magic wand. Someone asked me the other day, well, what's the guarantee on a resume? I said, well, you're guaranteed an incredible resume that will help you tell your story, but then you are the one in the interview seat. So just the hard work of putting together the document and really thinking about your way of doing business that people love you for is almost enough to help you kick off your interview prep. And that does it.
It's really great interview fodder. I actually do use the AI platforms also to ask what kinds of questions would I be getting in an interview for this kind of role. And I've used some of that to drive what I make sure to include in the resume.
Nice.
I do it sometimes because I don't even know what some of the words are on a resume, because they're putting, whether it's software or they're putting pharma stuff or whatever it is.
And I use Google for that. I guess I could use AI. I didn't think about that.
It's the same idea, but I'll say to the person, if it's specific to your industry, that's great. But if you're looking for a different sort of field or something, no one's going to know what it is. I mean, I could go as an IT person, I could go crazy with alphabet soup and IT stuff. But truthfully, when is too much too much? That's another reason I use it.
Well, that's a really good point. And writing in the industry's lingo is so important. With IT, sometimes I want to mix stuff that shows that I am that my client is an expert. I'll throw in some jargon, but then I also try to write it in a way that junior level recruiter that maybe is not an expert in whatever XYZ alphabet soup technology can understand what I'm saying. And if you're transitioning to a new industry, you better be clear on what that industry's lingo is, because it's different.
Yeah, I think even the skills I'm seeing people put on there, I'm like, Microsoft Office is not really a skill anymore. I mean, it's a skill, but
that will aid you for sure.
Yeah, but ChatGPT prompting could be something, right? So we're evolving. That could be something that could be very enticing to an employer, as long as you really can back it up. You know,
Well, and again,
that's always
think about the target always. Because I guess if you're targeting an admin role, then you do still need to be really sharp in MS Office or Word.
And I'm a big believer also. Your email address is part of who you are. I still see Yahoo email addresses. I see AOL email addresses. And besides how that shows you, you want to really think about how you come across that way. You know, that's going to really date you.
I think I really urge people to create a free Gmail that's just dedicated to their job search, and you can forward it to your other email.
Right.
But that way also you don't lose the job stuff in the sea of your regular emails.
Yeah.
Yes. I just learned how to do that, actually, Virginia. Not that
How to forward your emails?
Yes. Because before it was oh, you do? Yeah. Okay. And you can make it an alias. So if anybody's interested, we'd be happy to show you on another live maybe how you could do that. Yeah. If your email is tabledancer77 at AOL.com, it's time to join our live and learn how to fix that.
Yeah. Do not pick an email that references when you were born, when you graduated, none of that stuff. So
But forwarding is a very good point, because maybe not as much now, but if you were going from place to place from a cable company or somewhere else, and you had everything on that email address, you'd be lost. So I think, again, it's stuff that people of a certain age like myself never really realized before, because when we were doing this, we were doing job search differently. I mean, I still see addresses on resumes to this day.
You mean like full, like cities, like
a full address I see on there. I still see references upon request on the resumes.
Yeah.
And it's because people don't know that it dates them.
Right. Right. There's a lot of free resources. There's any book by, it's Emerald Publishing. It's Louise Kurzmark and Wendy Enelo. And who's the other one? And it'll come to me. Those books have so many samples, and it is always the latest in modern formats. And they've got them for everyone, new grads to senior execs across industries.
So format, you bring up what's a good font for resume formatting? You bring up the idea of formatting. Is there one point size, one typeface that you'd recommend?
Ooh, I have a favorite, and it's such a favorite, Kenneth, that I just went back. Oh, say that again. Oh. Can you see me? Am I cutting out?
Sorry.
We're good? Yeah. Yay, we're here. My dog just ran in too, so I was like, oh, Shruti, don't bark. So I realized that about 90% of my resumes use the same font. I love this font. I didn't even know I was a fontist, but I am, and it's Calibri.
What is it?
Calibri.
You like Calibri?
All day long. In fact, there's a Calibri and a Calibri Light, depending on the industry. And those are my two absolute go-tos. It's clean. It's sans serif, which means it doesn't have those little flags on the top and the bottom of the letters, which, psychologically speaking, is easier for our brains to digest. So Calibri for me is an absolute favorite. How about you guys?
For me, it depends. Shock. So I like a Wall Street resume. I might do a little bit more of a traditional one. I'll have more traditional headers like experience, education. I love Garamond for the traditional. For marketing and advertising, I might throw in Century Gothic. But I do aim for sans serif text. I mean, I could geek out on fonts all day long, but anything without little tails is usually good. But a lot of Calibri is a good one because you can squeeze a lot and still leave it legible. Another one is it's TW. It stands for 20th century something or other, but it's TW Sans. You can fit a ton of junk in there. And I'd go between 10.5 and 11.
Yeah.
On mine.
Me too. Yeah. It feels just right in that. Yeah. It's like the perfect, the sweet spot. Yeah.
But you can also change, this is going geeky on Microsoft Word, but you could go in and change the condensation of the font to squeeze it a little bit more. Like you can go to 0.25, 0.35, and you can make like a one line with one or two extra words into a one liner that way.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm 100% into that. And then I add a little bit of space between that and the next line, like a tiny breathe. Like I have been known to add a 1 point space between lines because you don't even need like full breathing room. You just need like a little.
I'll go. I go up to 0.5 in between mine, but yeah, but breathing. I know I'm crazy, but run it by your phone. Make sure you can read whatever you write. But white space just tricks your brain into thinking that something is not hard to read. That's why all those terms and conditions when you sign up for anything online are like this fat and 20 lines of 0.5 font because they're so hard to read. Nobody will read them.
How about Arial?
Yeah, I like Arial.
You would do Arial.
I will to condense it.
You got to do an Arial narrow.
Yeah. You have to go and do 0.25 or 0.3. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I think that great question, Neil, by the way, because I feel like Neil gets us. We need Lions, Tigers, resumes, and Neil on that one because
Sarah Calibri 10.5. Woo.
Oh, right. These are our people. 0.6.
Yeah.
Ooh, 0.6. Yeah.
I've been playing around with the page margins a little bit when I do my resumes for my LAX Harrison people because they're all different sizes. And sometimes, and I hate when there's like a straggler line on the next page or something.
Oh, that drives me crazy.
No, I want to try to get all the job title on one page. I hate when there's one word also. I don't like a word by itself. So that's where I kind of play around with the margins there because again, it's just not, it's visual too for me besides the content. I want to look at it and make sure it makes sense. And I hate the stragglers. Maybe that's my newspaper reporter editor hat going.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. What do they call those? Widows and orphans? They drive me nuts.
Exactly.
So I'll go 0.5 all around. I'm comfortable with. I will condense up to 0.35 and then I'll do the between line spacing as far down as 0.85 to try to keep it legible, but get it so that you don't like if I'm at 2 pages and like a teeny bit more on the third and I really want to get it to 2 pages, that strategy tends to work.
Yeah. I don't like to go to 3 pages, but I will. I've been dealing with 8 and 9 page resumes, which are but they're academic resumes. So they have a lot of stuff on there. And they're not necessarily applying for jobs per se.
Academic is a whole different ballgame.
Exactly.
Like 17 pages and they're fine with it. Yeah.
Exactly. Because the most I've seen is 15 pages. And there's no sense trying to tweak it. It is what it is. And there's no way I'm going to be able to go through typos and figure out what's what because it's just beyond my,
But they usually have presentations and that's an academic CV. That's a whole different
They have patents, they have presentations, they have publications. Yeah.
Oh, I can, okay. So CVs scare me away, guys. So I'm the quick down and dirty sales resume. Like get that down to 1 or 2 pages, likely to. But one resume I did this weekend was an occupational therapy resume, and she's going for a promotion. Right. And so what I do see commonly that reminds me a little bit of a CV because things are blocked out in their categories was I still do get a fair amount of resumes where on the second page, there will be a section for honors and awards. And
like an addendum sort of?
It was actually just so the first part was, contact information. And then we had some education, then we had work experience and then honors and awards on the back page. So I break that apart and I put them where they go with the different job titles or up into the career highlights, like you mentioned earlier, Virginia, because I want to see the big wins first. And Kenneth, I know you'll probably resonate from your editing days with the newspaper, but that top third is prime real estate. So I want to get the most impactful stuff right up front to, again, get people to click see more on us. And that's the way to do it. Get those honors and awards out.
I like to do, sometimes I'll call it like a success snapshot where I'll write it and then shade it or put some box around it so that I'm not creating a text box, but it gives the illusion of a text box. And that's where you can list your awards or, some scope of your responsibilities. But it's just sort of a quick snapshot that someone can quickly glance and get a flavor for what they did in that role.
Yeah.
What I've been doing is I've actually been shrinking some of these resumes down to 1 page because there's no reason to kind of fluff it out to 2 pages just to make it. And it
Yeah.
looks much better that way. I mean, these people are very qualified, but it's the old, it depends. I can't tell you how many times I hear people, the resume is supposed to be 2 pages. Resumes, no, it's not. There's
Yeah.
no one.
I get the reverse more where people think it's supposed to be one. And so
Really?
they've squished it down.
I get one or I get either, but like you said, it's generally because they thought it was supposed to be. Like someone said, like there's a rule, and really there's no rule. It's just how do you most effectively craft your marketing message, that is your career impact statements, to speak to your customer. So whoever that is, if it's you know, if it's industry standard and you're going after an academic position, your resume might be expected in the industry to be dozens of pages, you know, after a certain amount of time. So there's no real one way, but I think as long as you can kind of make the mindset shift of your LinkedIn profile, your resume, they are sales pages for you. So when somebody comes to view it, are they seeing that you are a solution to their problem? You know, instead of trying to sift through and extrapolate, is their experience relevant to my solution or the solution that I need?
You guys reminded me of something which I'd never thought about before, so thank you very much. And that is putting some of the wins and the courses or the things that they've done, honors and rewards, underneath each specific job instead of burying it at the end, because a lot of the resumes there could use that additional information there because it's buried at the bottom. And putting it there would kind of fill out a lot of, because a lot of the resumes, people just don't know what to put on the resumes is what I'm finding.
Sure.
And it's a moving target. So that's very helpful. That would be helpful.
When I write IT resumes, not CIOs, but like mid-level or people that need the technology really matters and the certifications matter, I'll create a technology snapshot at the very top, like before the experience, and I'll say, here's certifications, here's whatever software I know, and I'll break it down by the type of software maybe, or the languages or the methodologies, so that the reader immediately thinks this person is a skilled technologist.
Right.
And then you don't need to go experience by experience saying I use this software and this methodology. But so that I found that very effective for IT.
Yes.
That's good. I think the other thing too is if anybody here listening is in healthcare or has had to go to some kind of national sales meeting or present at a meeting like that, something that is almost never talked about on a resume are the presentations that you have had to put together for those kinds of speaking engagements. And here's the thing. If I need a national sales manager for my new pharmaceutical product, well, if you have experience not just getting the wins there, but also training teams, building teams, presenting to teams on specific things. It can be anything from, sales acumen and strategy to, how to understand and leverage personality profiles at work. Right? How to engage better with your team to help to, all boats rise in the tide. Whatever it is, those presentations can be really powerful too, because they know that you can come in and not just do your job, which is sales and leading others, but you've got specific assets that you can also provide. And this, by the way, is an additional, little tick on the post for what you can use when you're negotiating and when you're talking about how you are a value added candidate.
I agree. And I make sure to reference publications, even if you were a guest panelist or you presented a poster or whatever it is, I reference in the summary at the top that, they're regarded as an expert because of doing you speaking and presenting, and then you can go in on page 2, you can sort of speak to what you give the details, but that differentiates you as a thought leader for sure.
Totally. Yeah. I think overall, I find that professionals don't give themselves enough credit.
No.
And I'm here to say, ask any of these wonderful people, Virginia, Kenneth, I know you guys see this all the time, is we tend to think about there's a need for us to be employed, right? We've got to keep our lights on. We've got to support our families. But we hope that company takes a chance on us. And I wish that I could like reach through the screen and just like shake people by the shoulders and be like, but listen, you are an incredible professional beyond what you even realize. So I find that people generally don't give themselves enough credit, and I wish that they did. And sometimes the only way to unlock it is to get that second pair of eyes, or have a conversation with someone who's a little bit further from your story, so that you can start to tell it and then have someone almost parrot it back to you and validate the things you've been doing as really exceptional.
And then
Sometimes
you don't
we're
feel
too
like you're
close.
bragging. You don't feel like you're bragging because you're stating facts and you can speak to them. You've got the story for each one versus, I mean, people have a really hard time describing themselves with adjectives because it feels like bragging. But when you replace the adjectives with data and stories, then it boosts your confidence.
Yeah.
Well, people need to sell themselves because, especially in job search, you are selling yourself and selling everything about you. And your resume is now the selling point. And I think most people sometimes don't know where to start because they're just so into, like, I went back and looked at my resume that I haven't looked for a job in a while. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you thinking, Ken? Because at the time, because even now, 2-3 years later, it's a much different resume and it would be. And that's only 2-3 years.
That's why I would never write my own resume, because I need someone who's much more neutral and didn't live through my blood, sweat, and tears, right?
Yeah, we're too close. We're way too close to our own story. I've got someone who's helped me with my branding, with my resume as well. And it makes me laugh because, gosh, I've written, like you, we've written thousands of resumes. So you'd think, and LinkedIn profiles, right, Kenneth?
Yeah.
But still, at the end of the day, which we all love to say in sales, at the end of the day, we're too close to our own story to tell it well sometimes without a sounding board. So I hope that this empowers you, whoever's listening, whoever's here today, to get a sounding board, whether it's hiring a coach, working with a resume writer, working with a LinkedIn specialist, or even just friends, family, colleagues.
Someone, like an accountability group.
Exactly. It's so helpful, incredibly helpful.
Yeah, it's very easy to bury the lead when you're telling your own story.
Sometimes you don't even know what the lead is because the more I mean, you think it's one thing, but it's another. I've gone through 5 or 6 or almost 7 different careers throughout the years. And what I'm doing now is nowhere close to what I did when I left college, but the skills never really left me. The first job I had was as a newspaper reporter, which is not happening anymore, but the writing skills never leave you. The mindset never leaves you. I mean, I used to joke when I was going into IT for the first time, and they would say, well, what's this difference between what you did before, which was editorial, and what are you going to do in IT now? And I said, well, they're both deadline driven, which they were and are. And I had to manage multiple projects at the same time because that was the only thing I could think of that had anything to do with newspaper reporting and IT. Like it's deadlines.
And compliance. You had to follow AP or Chicago style formatting, and IT, you have other regulatory stuff.
Yep.
But what you did is you found transferable skills, which is how you write a story when you're making a change or when you're trying to narrate.
I mean, but I'm not naive enough to think I'm going to talk about some of my past experience now because it's not relevant at all. But I learned a lot about.
Oops, sorry.
Not my dog.
Rudy. It's my dog.
Bring the dog in. Come on. So, no.
My dog's a pocket dog. She sounds like a mouse when she barks.
Well, our grand puppy is not here today, but there we go.
Oh, there's Rudy boy. He's a good boy.
I just saw Roberta's question about just shading a few lines. I think she was talking about. She said, shading is always helpful. Shading is a great way to make something stand out. You can use the what do you call the thing where you do like lines around it?
Oh, like
outlines.
A frame?
Like a frame. Yeah, that's another way. So it gives the appearance of a text box without being a text box because some older ATS systems can't read things in text boxes.
Yep, I like to do a little bit of shading, and then it really depends on how much color I'm using in the rest of the document, because I'm not a big fan of like flashy resumes. And, by and large, medical sales and healthcare, I mean, we're very traditional still. So just a nuance of color, like a pop of color here and slight shading behind just some important parts to break up the text can help to draw someone's eye to the pieces you want them to see first.
Right.
And again, if we just think about, okay, if you look at any type of advertisement, here's one. Okay, right? Clearly, the most important things that we're focusing on here are like the, what kind of bar is this? And then who is it from, right? Make the logo bigger. Same thing. The biggest things you want to showcase on your resume are going to be those you want people to see first.
That's right. And bold and all caps is another design element that you can use, depending on what you want to, where you want the reader to go.
Yeah.
So, but I'm like you, I want content to be king. I don't want design for design's sakes, but there's design elements you can use that to your advantage.
Yep.
So when I want to really showcase the roles, like the titles, I might bold those and leave the company name not in bold, or maybe use a lighter color. Conversely, if I want to showcase the company names, I'll bold those and not do so for the job titles.
Well, I want to thank you guys very much for today. This has been such a great conversation. And I want to make sure you guys have a great rest of May and June and summertime coming up. And we will get another Lions, Tigers, and Resumes together. Or maybe it's the Addams family. It's Uncle Fester, Morticia, and
Wednesday? Oh,
Wednesday.
Great.
Wednesdays, yeah. I only got 3 episodes in on Wednesdays.
Oh,
all right.
It's dark,
Have a great
man.
day,
It
everyone.
is.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.